Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Awaken to Your Soul Path. I am your host, Barbara, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Tania Gonzalez-Ortega. And we are going to be talking about, and I need to look at the title because we are going to be talking about the New Earth Awakening, and then specifically how to navigate the spiritual dimensions. And I've been really looking forward to this. I recently wrote an article and created a video about the 3D, 4D, and 5D realms because I've been having a lot of people ask me about this. So I'm very, very grateful that you're here, Tanya, today to talk about all of this, and I look forward to our conversation.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Barbara.
So, what is New Earth Awakening?
New Earth Awakening. Well, I think amongst spiritually awakened people, there's a lot of talk and awareness around, a new paradigm, a new consciousness, a new age, right? We're moving into the age of Aquarius. Um, a lot of people have seen it. There was a lot of talk about 2012, right? December 21st, 2012 being this huge shift in consciousness according to the Mayan calendar. There's all this talk about this new earth, I call it new earth consciousness, that is, I think people have a sense of or a feeling about. And for sure, I think most people are coming to the realization as a collective that humanity itself is kind of like on this precipice, right? There's a lot of people talking about, okay, we're either going to evolve or die, basically, right? So what is being asked of us? Like, okay, we absolutely know beyond the shadow of a doubt that all of our systems that we've been engaged in, all the old paradigm of um, dominating nature, constant constant production and growth. These ideas are reaching a point that where it's not sustainable. It's not a sustainable way to live.
Mhm.
So we're being asked to come back into balance with nature.
Mhm.
And so the question is, okay, well, what does that look like? And
Mhm.
I just remember there, I think previous to this present time, I think people always had a sense of there being a path, like a delineated path before them. Like I think our parents had that, like, oh, you go to college and you get a job and then you do this and you do that, and here's the path, and this is the way forward. Whereas now, even more so with the younger generation, they're seeing like there is no delineated, defined path, that we're actually creating it as we go along. So there is no there's no outside authority, or I don't know, a sense of yeah, of what is, having a sense of, oh yeah, here's ABCDE, you're just going to follow this and this is the direction to go in, and this sense of being pulled in a certain direction. I feel like it's more and more like time is collapsing into the present moment over and over and over again, of just this like meeting the present moment, because we've there's this, yeah, because we're being pushed into a new consciousness somehow, right? That um, we're finding that future projecting of thinking about the future or worrying about the past, that we realize, okay, that doesn't work anymore. That we're being, there's something that wants to emerge that bring, so anyway, I'm kind of rambling, but that's to me, that is what is wanting to be birthed. And I just see a lot of creators, visionary creatives and creators and visionaries playing in the field of consciousness of like, okay, what's possible? Can we
Yes.
dream up new ways of, um, you know, new ways of education, new ways of exchanging money, what is, and redefining money, like what does that mean? Um, what are new ways of exchange? Yeah, even just watching, I feel like the current election is a perfect example of what isn't working, this, polarity, us versus them. And okay, well, that, are we going to just stay in that kind of warring mentality of this or that? How can we come together and actually move beyond that, and finding common ground? So yeah,
Mm,
there's a lot on the table that we're being asked to look at.
yeah. So if I'm understanding you correctly, what you call New Earth Awakening is what other people might call the shift, the
Yeah,
big shift that's coming, right?
yeah,
Yes. And I know that in human design, Ra also talks about it and that he sees it happening in 2027. But I think there are already mini shifts. So there was a massive shift last year. There was a massive shift this year. There's going to be a shift next year. So I think all of these shifts are indeed or shifting us into this new consciousness, this new way of being. Because what's becoming abundantly clear is that the old ways of doing things and the old systems, they are not working, and one by one they're crumbling. So this needs to happen, and this is also a pattern that has happened, I think, forever. There's always this up and down motion in earth, so where we go from the flower power hippie time where everything was love and peace and intuition and feminine energy, and then we went into the era that we're now leaving, where everything was masculine energy and consciousness of a cognitive, the mind, goal setting, action taking. And we're now moving away from that again towards the era where there's more room for the femininity, for the feminine energies, for the intuition, for empathy, and those types of things.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And part of my background is as a Waldorf educator, and what I find really fascinating, Steiner kind of talked about this, um, I forget what he called it, but I call it like the cosmic bathtub. But it's like, this evolution of consciousness, we're kind of like we're descending, descending, descending to the lowest point, for humanity at that. This is what he describes, is that that's when the Christ was born, came onto the planet, and shifted that kind of decline, and now we're like on this upswing of the cosmic bathtub. But when you step back, and the yogis and the seers of the ancient seers of the past saw that there are these cycles that, on these much larger cycles that we move through. We move through the golden age of consciousness into the Kali Yuga, which is considered the dark age, and that we kind of always continuously cycle through these ages of darkness and light. And what I find really fascinating about what I've learned about that is, that there was a golden time, and in that golden time, there was this peace and bliss and all of that. But the thing of that is that when there's less darkness, you're actually not that aware of how much light is actually present. And so I just remember, when I was studying yoga and meditation, and it was often said that, oh yeah, okay, we're in Kali Yuga, and this time of darkness. And I guess the benefit of being in a time of darkness is that whatever amount of spiritual practice that you do, you actually are moving through, speeding through many lifetimes. So the spiritual evolution that can happen in an age of darkness is actually much faster than what would happen in a golden age. And so the light is so much more amplified in a way, right? So
Mhm.
uh and so I can see that, right? Like we're seeing so much darkness kind of bubbling up from, right? Like all the darkness and the wounds that are being revealed because the light that's coming in is revealing the darkness and what needs to be healed. And so even though it feels um, from a human perspective, it feels like, oh my gosh, this is so much, you know? Um, but if you can step out of that, you know, the smaller the human part that's experiencing and seeing all of it, uh, from a higher perspective or a more divine perspective, we can look at that and realize, wow, you know, like this is all being lifted up to be revealed to consciousness, because once we see it, then it can be addressed, right? It's
Hmm.
darkness when it doesn't get revealed, it just kind of keeps running the show, right? Because
Yes, we need to
we're
shine
not
a
aware
light
of it.
on it to
Yeah,
reveal it.
yeah. So I think that's kind of what is happening in this new age, is that the light is revealing all of these things that aren't working. And even though in the moment it feels like, oh my gosh, how in the world are we ever going to get through all of this? It's just,
Hmm.
I think a lot of it's just leaning into trust and opening ourselves up more to being open to receive divine guidance, and connecting to our spiritual self, you know, to
Yes,
connect to the fact that we are actually divine and human at the same time.
yes,
So
yes.
that bridging together of spirit and matter.
And I think this is very difficult for a lot of people because a lot of people feel separated. And a lot of people feel very disconnected and alone. They're disconnected from their own body, they're disconnected from their intuition, and they're also disconnected from source energy. So a lot of people want to control things, to have an idea of being able to control the outcome. So that makes it very difficult to let go and to surrender when you feel like you need to control everything in order to get what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, to figure it out, to have it all figured out.
Yes.
And yeah, it can feel, yeah, I'm sure. And we fall into that just because we're human. We do feel like we
Yes.
have we have to fix it. We have to figure it out. Um, when, yeah, really the journey is about letting go and allowing a higher intelligence to uh, guide us and direct us. So yeah, letting go of that control can feel very scary, because we are so used to knowing what the next step is to take.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And but it's also how we've been raised, right? It's what you say. There's a, sort of the golden path for a human, and it is to get a really good education, to find a really good job, to find the ideal partner, to get married, to buy a house, to have children, and then to work there until you retire, and then maybe enjoy your life for a little bit before you die.
Yeah. Yeah. And which is crazy, right? Like it feels, even that just feels very Bach-like, like
Yeah.
very programmatic. And, you know, I was just thinking about it today. I was, you know, doing my movement and um, just having this knowing of the soul, and the soul being this very organic, like when I think of the soul, or when I tap into, or maybe imagine, okay, what is the soul? The soul to me doesn't have these hard edges, right?
No.
At all. There's no right angles
Very fluid.
right? Like it's very fluid or an organic. I mean, when you think about the way a plant grows, you know, there's it's just organic and flowy and curved, and yes, it has direction, but it's not yeah, it's very different from the matrix, let's say. The matrix feels very like programmatic. Um, so the soul is this, and I think why uh, that approach to life, I guess many of us have to learn the hard way, right? We have to encounter the program to realize that it doesn't work.
Hmm.
That, oh, actually who I am is a mystery.
Yes.
I find that um, there is this pressure, I think, in the old paradigm where it's like, you need to figure out who you are, you
Yes.
need to know who
What you
you
want to
are,
be.
what are you, who you are. And it's like, I don't know who I am. I don't, there's no way. It's like it's constantly unfolding. I mean, you're asking me, who am I? There's nothing, I can't grab onto anything that says this is who I am, other than I just know that I am, period. That's it. Like I
Well,
am,
I think
right?
it also depends on how you look at that question because I was called by my spirits to think about who I am this week. And I started walking. I did a 3 hour nature walk where I contemplated who I am. And it kind of depends on your definition of it. So it's not I am a woman or I am a musician or I am an astronaut, right? That's not what it is. But when I was thinking about it, then I think I am a soul. I am a divine spirit. I am someone who helps other people. I am someone who loves being in nature. I am someone who has a deep connection to the animal world. So, all of these things is what I am. It's just not one thing. And what you are is, it can be a lot more abstract than what most people think.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, and when we kind of really tune into the truth of that, we realize that there are no limits to who we are
Oh,
because right? Like um we're simply here to experience the fullness of life to whatever degree we decide. It's this free will and choice. And so um yeah, that's the beauty of it is the freedom to explore and to decide, well, what is it that I want to experience now?
I think in the end, we can be anyone or anything that we want to be. We just need to get clear on it. So if you think I want to be a kind and loving person, then be a kind of loving person, because then you can say, I am a kind and loving person. So there's a lot more that we have influence on that we are aware of. And what I see a lot in the people that I have the privilege of guiding is that they are still thinking that their thoughts rule them instead of that they can take ownership of their thoughts and that they have the power to think a different thought at any given moment, any given day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, yeah, totally. Like that's the power of free will and choice. If we can really um grasp the power of that, yeah, with any thought you have in that moment to choose to believe it or not, you know.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I think that's the beauty of being human, right? We are
Hmm.
the only beings on planet Earth that have that free will and choice. It's what makes us so unique in comparison to the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom or even to the angels, right? So
Yes.
we have this free will to decide,
Yeah.
yeah, are we
Yes.
going to choose love or fear? Yeah.
But a lot of these things that we are now talking about, they are not being taught in school. So you do not get to learn that you are basically connected to source and that you're a soul having a human experience. Nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about how does your intuition work? What is intuition? How do I work with it? How do I feel it in my body? How can I utilize it? No, nobody talks about that. If you feel that you're unhappy and you're thinking unhappy thoughts, that within those thoughts, at any moment, you can start thinking about things that are making you happy, changing your vibration, let alone what vibration is, what frequency is, what paradigms are. All of these things are not being taught in school.
Mm-mm. No, they aren't. And it's unfortunate because I think children naturally are extremely intuitive. I mean, I can remember, um, unfortunately, learning how to override my intuition because that's what you're programmed to do, like to not trust your intuition, and like, no, you're supposed to believe that person, or, don't listen to the red flags that you're feeling in your body. And so it takes time to reclaim that, right? Then we have to work through letting go of those traumas. But
Yes.
yeah, I think that the children of today, what I do notice just being an educator is that the new souls, I will say, they are coming in with such deep spiritual wisdom that is kind of mind-blowing, like the little ones. I remember my son saying to me, he was about age 3, maybe 3 or 4, and we're driving in the car, and he says, Mom, you're actually not my real mom. I was like,
Mm,
oh, really?
that's
Who is your
interesting.
mother? Yeah, who is your mother then? He says, my real mother is Mother Nature. He says, I came from an eagle's nest. I was like,
It's
very well.
beautiful.
Yeah. Poetic, right? But true, yeah, no, you're right. Your true mother is Mother Earth.
I think as children, we are born perfect. I think we are very much connected to Source. We are very much connected to Earth. We're very much connected to ourselves. We have utmost faith in ourselves and our abilities. We do not doubt ourselves. We can use our intuition. We can talk to spirits. We can talk to angels. We can communicate with animals. I think we have all of this in us. But most adults see it as using your fantasy or using your imagination. But I think it's natural gifts. I have always had the gift of knowing. I knew things with a certainty, with absolute clarity, but it frightened the humans, the adults around me, and they said, "Oh, you cannot say things like that, or you cannot do things like that." And then you start to feel like it's a bad thing. And I think we also intuitively feel when things are right or wrong for us. But I turned out to have a severe lactose intolerance, and I didn't want to drink milk. But my parents actually bribed me to drink milk. They gave me money to drink milk because they thought it was good for your bones and it would make you really strong. And when things like that start happening to you, you start to move away from trusting in your natural abilities, trusting in your natural gifts, and you indeed get programmed. And that becomes even worse when we go to school because I see school as sort of like a factory. Everybody goes onto the conveyor belt, goes into the factory, and then everybody comes out more or less the same at the end of their school period.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about that, just looking at the difference between my generation and let's say my son's generation. So my son is 12. He already sees school as he sees it for what it is. He knows already that it's a program and that it's not really designed to empower him as a soul or even
Hmm.
as a way uh, as something that will actually help him get the things that he wants in life. Like,
Hmm.
which is fascinating to me because for me as a child, I was like, oh, okay, I got to get good grades. So
Yeah.
that's what I did. I got the good grades,
But that's
So
what my parents also said. Your parents probably also, right? You needed to get good grades because then
the
you
good
have a
grades,
good
okay, I'll get the
education.
good grades. Yeah. And of course, then you realize like, oh, well, that doesn't do anything. Like that's not that doesn't help really in the bigger picture of things. So I guess for me, then that gives me hope because
Hmm.
these children are coming in with already awakened,
Yes.
already really aware of what's
Hmm.
going on. They can see the matrix for what it is. They already know that there's a lot of, um, oh, you're frozen. Oh, there you are. Oh, you're back. Yeah, that there's a lot of BS. There's a lot of false narratives and old paradigms that hold no ground. They don't have any substance. And so
Yes.
that gives me hope it's a kind of it's a sign that yes, the consciousness is evolving and expanding. And I think that's
Hmm.
the beauty. I remember a Zen master saying, and this has really hit home for me because it just sounded so true. He says, the beauty of consciousness is that you can't stop it from expanding.
Hmm.
It will expand. You can try and slow it down. You can try and like push it in a corner, but it's always going to push in further and further
Yes.
outward, extending outward into the dark, so to speak, to illuminate.
Hmm.
So in that way, and I think that's where we can lean into the trust of like, okay, even though I in this moment may not know what tomorrow brings, or even maybe what I'm going to be doing next year or next month, I can trust that there is a larger consciousness, a universal consciousness that is expanding, and I'm a part of that,
Yes.
right?
Yes, yes, exactly. And I also think that if I compare it to my mother's generation or my grandmother's generation, and then indeed looking for in the future to the newer generations that are coming in the world, things are massively shifting. Spirituality and talking about spirituality was not done in my grandmother's time. It wasn't even done in my mother's time. It started in my time. And I think with all the work that we are doing, me, you, and others like us, we are influencing the next generations. And they've already proven with things like epigenetics that everything that we are doing is stored in our DNA, and we hand that down to the next generation. And I think that that's also what allows the next generation to already come into the world with certain knowledge that wasn't available to us when we were born.
Yeah, absolutely. That we have the power to change our DNA. That to me, like
Yes.
so that is so profound. Like if people really get that and they realize like, oh yeah, no, your DNA is actually not hardwired. Like you have the power to change its expression, and that the brain is not, it also is not hardwired, that it is
No.
always malleable and changeable, um, is incredible. So yeah,
Yes.
it's exciting for sure.
Very exciting, because it also empowers people. Lots of people are either believing themselves or they have been told, "Oh, but this is hereditary." Cancer is hereditary; it runs in your family, so of course you have it, right? But it doesn't have to be that way, because if we can influence our DNA, and they've already scientifically proven that our thoughts change our DNA, and those are also the miracle stories, right? That I heard a story about a woman who was diagnosed with cancer, and it was severe cancer, and they told her you have 2 weeks left to live, and she thought, no. No, 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 I do not believe this. This might be your belief, but this is not my belief. And I am going to purge my body from this. And I have bigger plans for myself. And this is not going to be my reality. And she stopped working. She took off, and she really started dedicating all of her energy to her beliefs, and she started taking daily baths. And then she would be in the bathtub with Epsom salt, and she would really visualize that the Epsom salt with the water, because we are made out of 95% water, so a large amount, that the water and the salt were sort of pulling all the bad stuff out of her. And she would soak in it for an hour, and she would visualize all with every breath she would take in a cleansing breath and then push the bad stuff out, which was being pulled by the water. And then at the end of the hour, that all the bad stuff that the water had collected would then go down the drain and would be out of her system. And then 2 weeks later, she wasn't dead. She was still alive. And the doctors, they looked at her, they put her in scans, and the whole cancer was gone. And they were
Wow.
like, how is this possible?
See, this is it right here. This is what is not being televised. Like when we talk about, I mean, I remember in the 60s there was this song that said it was something like the revolution will be not televised. This is a great song. Anyway,
Mm,
this what you're talking about right here, there are thousands of stories like that
yes.
one. Thousands all over the planet of these quote unquote, people calling them miracles. And it's like, what if they weren't miracles? What if it was just reality, that actually you hold the power, you are the consciousness that can create that. And yeah, I mean, I've witnessed it myself and others, you know, these miracles where it's like
Mhm.
1 minute, you know, someone's blind, the next minute they can see. you know,
Mhm.
and exactly one moment a person says they're going to be dead in 2 weeks, the next the cancer is completely gone. This is happening all the time. And
It
so I
has to do with your beliefs, right? Because and that's I think one of the biggest problems that we have. As soon as someone puts on a white coat, then they are seen as an expert, an authority on a field. So if someone with a white coat that is your doctor tells you you're going to die in 2 weeks, you believe you're going to die in 2 weeks, and it is that belief that makes you die in 2 weeks. But if you think, well, that's your opinion, I have a very different one, and I'm not accepting this, and my belief is something very different, then you draw your path. You're going on your journey instead of going down the rabbit hole that someone tells you to. But there are not enough people that are aware of this power and this possibility.
yeah, 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 yeah. There's so much there's so much research now on the connection of, the mind body spirit connection, the power of prayer, the power of your thoughts, um, you know quantum technologies, just the fact that reality is extremely malleable, um, and that things can shift, that you can collapse time, to where there is no time, and that
Mhm.
there's no separation, that me connecting to you, that there is actually no space between us. We're all here now in this present moment connected. And that's why energy can, when people ask about energy healing or whatever, like, well, how does that work if I'm not in the room? How is it that I could receive energy healing from you? It's because it's actually scientifically proven there is no time and space, and we're all one and we're all connected. And so through the power of intention and the power of belief, the power, the reality that we're actually just energy, um, and that energy influences form, and then
Mhm.
we can change our reality. It's yeah.
Yeah, they did another really cool experiment where they fired neutrons on a wall. And when there was someone watching, they went through a slit and then they made a straight line at the end of the slit, something that you would expect, right? If there's only a narrow opening and it's sort of like paintballs, right? You shoot paintballs in that split, then they only have the space that is there when the opening is there. So in the extension of the opening. But when nobody was watching, the neutrons went in all kinds of directions and they didn't behave in that way. So they proved that when you're aware of something, when you're watching something, things behave very differently than when you let it go. I thought that was also incredibly interesting because that's not what you would expect. You would expect it to behave the same whether you're watching or not.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and yeah, it's true. So our reality is not, um, it's not fixed. So yeah, there's this, yeah, what is consciousness? It's
Hmm.
it's mysterious. So yeah, so again, that they're finding that, like, science is and spirituality coming together and realizing, like, oh, it's actually, there isn't a separation between the
To
two.
me, they are two sides of the same coin.
Hmm.
One is the yin side and the other one is the yang side. I think their power is when they unite and when they start working together. But I think spiritual people are open to that. Most science people are not really open to that. But I'm hoping that with the new shift, with the paradigms disappearing, that there will be more space for that as well. That will be awesome.
Yeah, I think that if as science, I don't like to use I don't know if quantify is the right word, but if science is able to come to, like, this deep understanding, and, is satisfied by the proof of that, spirit exists, or whatever you want to call it, that from that knowledge that they can actually create then, technologies that are actually supportive of life on Earth and not detrimental, right? So, because I feel like in the past, science has been incredible. Like, yeah, they've been able to create amazing things, many of them which are frightening, right? Like, the A bomb and whatever. Uh, But if science can then connect back to the wholeness of everything, my curiosity is, okay, what happens then if they're actually, if
Mhm.
they can create such terrible, destructive technologies, what happens if they turn into it towards another direction? What is
Yeah.
possible then? And
If they start using them for good.
I think there's potential for that. And actually, I think that's the direction that we have to go in, because
Mhm.
a lot of people, you know, I don't think we can go backwards with technology. Can't just be like, okay, we're just going to go back to riding horses and digging holes in the dirt and growing our potatoes. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there, there has to be a path for, I believe that there's this potential for technology to then advance in a way that's in alignment with Earth herself. And so,
Yes.
yeah, so we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see.
Exactly. Yeah, so we've been talking about the new shift and science and the new discoveries, and it's been incredibly interesting and eye-opening. But we haven't really talked about the spiritual dimensions much yet.
Yeah, yeah. I can only I guess, share from my own personal experience of having gone through Kundalini Awakening, um, from living in just 3D,
Hmm.
regular 3D reality, and, you know, sleep, right? I feel like most people experience those states of like, okay, there's 3D, there's the dream state, and then there's like, the REM where you're just completely offline. Um, and through my Kundalini awakening, I realized like, oh, there are many realities. There's not just the 3D, and there's not just the dream state. There's these
Hmm.
other astral realms and parallel realities and past lives, and other beings, and extraterrestrials, and all the
Hmm.
there's just so much more than what we see in this 3D. There's so much more that's
Hmm.
happening. Um, that being said, I feel that yes, there are these higher. Well, I don't even like to. I can't even say if they are higher, quote unquote, higher necessarily. I don't know if there's a hierarchy, but there's just these different levels or different qualities or different states of reality that have a different feel, and
Hmm.
um, and some of these I experienced out of body,
Hmm.
out of body experiences. And I feel that we're in this place now where, for lack of a better word, that the goal is to to be awake within the third dimension. And so I think there's an awakening that we are being called to come more deeply into the body, if that makes sense. And that's something that I personally have been exploring is okay, how present can I be? And can I bring
Hmm.
my awareness all the way into my body, from my head down to my feet? How can I keep bringing it back and bringing it back into this body? And what I'm finding is that, and what I'm learning and hearing in many other, different spiritual communities from different spiritual teachers who experience this full body awakening, is that it's so available now, whereas in the past it took years and years and years and years and years and years and years of meditating in a cave, right? And
Yeah.
fasting and doing all these extreme practices, right? In ancient times. And we're actually in a time now where this awakening is actually available to everybody. You can be an everyday person. You don't have to be this,
Hmm.
highly ordained monk, or have, years and years of hardcore spiritual training. That it's getting boiled down to this very simple practice of just bringing yourself back into the present moment. And um, and I feel in my life there's just been different, where the veils open of different possibilities, like,
Hmm.
oh, having an experience of literally having a conversation with a rose, for example. I remember
Hmm.
being in this, after having meditated, looking at this flower and like literally feeling this communication with a rose, you know.
Hmm.
So, so these different potentialities of experiencing ourselves as spiritual beings, where we're able to um, open up to these other gifts of, telepathy or
Yes.
clairvoyance or clairgnosis or clairaudience, or cross species communication. It's just it's all available. And so yeah, that's what I can say about that, is that the spiritual awakening, um, there's just I think when we have these high states, or we have these glimpses into these bliss states or extraordinary states, or extraordinary spiritual experiences, to me they're kind of like these breadcrumbs. Like, for one, we don't want to cling to them, and I think
Hmm.
that can happen. It's like, you have this state of deep bliss or peace, and you're like, oh my God, I just want to hang on to it. It's like, okay, no, you gotta it's just an experience passing through. And so it's just like continuing on and just allowing these experiences to come and go, and just knowing that we're constantly expanding into yeah, different states of being, and that there is no actual goal, but it's just opening up into um, wider and wider experiences. I think that's the goal.
Hmm.
Like, how far can you expand?
I think the veil is thinning. It is becoming thinner between the different dimensions, which makes it easier to tap into. I also think that a lot of people think that time, for instance, is linear. This is the past and that is the future, but that's not true. There are indeed different timelines, and it depends on what choice you make. A lot of people are also convinced, oh, there's only one right choice. But I don't believe that. There's just a choice or another choice or maybe a third choice, a fourth choice. And based on the information that we have, we make a choice and then we're off into that timeline. And then maybe we make another choice and maybe the timeline bends and goes into another direction again. And this is very fluid, and it's not linear. It's everything is present, I think, at the same time, and we can also move lateral between things, and then maybe we go up, maybe we go a little bit back. And I think that there's a lot that we don't know about it yet, but it does feel like the veil is becoming thinner and it's becoming easier to communicate indeed with plants or with animals, or to communicate with loved ones, dead ones, with spirit, with angels, with guides, mediumship. And more people are tapping into their mediumship, into their psychic abilities. More and more children are born with the clairs already in place and knowing how to handle them. And I think that we were also born with those clairs, but we, because of society, learned to turn away from them.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
yeah, yeah. I think that it'll be amazing to see that these, what was once considered unusual,
Mhm.
to become the norm.
Normal. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course you can, communicate with the hawk that's in the tree, or or yeah, your loved one passing. Like, yeah, um,
I remember when I was, I think, in my teens, this film came out with Bruce Willis. I forgot the title, but there's one sentence that the boy says that everybody knows, and it's, I see dead people.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
That one, right? Everybody knows I see dead people. And that was, way out there. And that movie and that topic was way out there. And now it's the most normal thing that there is. Of course, there are dead people. And of course, you can communicate with them. And of course, you can see them. You
yeah.
can't.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It's very exciting of what's possible.
Yes. I've been really loving our talk, Tanya. I think it's very important to talk about these things. I have a lot of people asking me about the shift, about the upcoming changes, the things that are happening. There are lots of people who are feeling exhausted because they're getting all of these downloads, whether they're aware of it, yes or no, but it's taking a toll on people. Their spiritual abilities are coming in. A lot of people are going through the dark night of the soul. Lots of people are being triggered. Lots of people are opening up to the possibility that there's more out there than what they teach us in school. So this is a very alive time, a very dynamic time. And that's why I think it's so important to have conversations like this, because a lot of people are thirsty for knowledge and wanting to know more. And this has, I think, been extremely eye-opening. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. It's been, a real pleasure. And I can also imagine that if you're watching and listening to this, that you think, oh, I loved this talk. So if that is the case, I would love it if you could maybe leave us a comment. Maybe you have questions, ask them in the comments. We will make sure that we answer them. Or maybe let us know what was the most eye-opening thing that Tanya and I talked about today. That would also be really cool to hear or to read about in the comments. And I can also imagine that you're thinking, I have experiences or I have questions and I would love to talk to Tanya. So if people want to reach out to you, Tanya, where can they find you? How can they connect?
Yeah, great. You can connect with me on my website, newearthconsciousness.com. I'm also on Facebook as Tanya Elena, or you can also Google my full last name. I should show up there. And you can join my Facebook group. You can sign up for my email newsletter where I share upcoming events. I do a lot of constellation workshops where we tap into the knowing field. And I love sharing that modality just so people have an experience of what it's like to tap into your intuition and into the unseen realms. It's beautiful work, and yeah, and I think that's about it. So yeah, those two places. I
Perfect.
also have a YouTube channel where I interviewed Barbara,
Yeah.
New Earth Consciousness on YouTube. You can like and subscribe there, and there's a lot of interviews there you can check out from, yeah, different people that I've interviewed as well. And yeah, and that's it.
Perfect. I love it. If this went too fast for you, no worries. I will make sure that the links and everything that Tanya just mentioned are included in the show notes. They will probably be below this video, but it could also be to the side somewhere. It depends on where you're catching this, but it will definitely be there. So look for it and you will find it. If you want to talk to me, then I offer a free clarity call and you will always be welcome. All my links will also be there. And for today, I just want to thank you, watcher, listener, viewer, for being here, for joining us in this conversation, for your support for this channel. I love you. And I want to thank you, Tanya, for being here, for being such a wonderful guest and talking about these very important topics with me today.
Yes, thank you so much, Barbara, for having me. It's so nice to be connected.
Definitely. For today, I wish everybody a really beautiful rest of your day, and I look forward to inspiring you again with another new guest in next week's episode. Have an amazing rest of your day.